today. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you that we have a place to be grounded, that we want to be filled with the Spirit and grounded in the word in our lives so we can grow up in your presence. So I just pray that, you wrote this book, so it'd be great if you were actually the one inspiring the teaching as well. So God, help this bald man up front. Amen. Amen. All right. Today we're going to launch a new series. If you were here last year, we did a series on 1 Samuel. We called it Conquering Giants. It's a series that really focuses on the life of this man, David, from a shepherd up to the point he becomes a king. It's about all the giants that we conquer in our lives, giants of fear and jealousy and anxiety and all kinds of things. And so I want to encourage you, if you haven't seen that series, you can get it on our app, or you can get it on the YouTube page for the church, through our website, things like that. But maybe go back and refresh yourself on some of the backstory of this shepherd to king named David. Now we're picking up the series again, part 2 of this 2-part series. And we're going to call this series David, Lessons in Life, Love, and Leadership. We're going to begin to take a look at David throughout through his kingship, through his leadership, through his love life, through his real life, and still begin to learn some things in our own lives. Well, how many of us ever struggle or could use a little bit of help in love, in life, and just in leadership in your life, right? Do you know every person in this room is a leader? Every one of you. If leadership is simply being a person of influence, then you are a leader. Some of you are called to lead thousands. Some of you are called to lead hundreds. Some of you are called to lead your family. Some of you just lead your cat, right? But you're a leader. You're an influencer. And so we got a lot of stuff we can learn. And so we're going to walk alongside David in this series for a number of weeks now and kind of look at as he develops. And he is not a perfect king. He is actually a fallen king in many ways. He still is learning things. Pastor Greg often says around here, when you hit new levels, you hit new devils in your life. You know, when you grow and God pulls you into new levels of influence or leadership or growth in your relationship with Him, you encounter new devils, new challenges, new things you got to face in your life. And so this is what's going to happen to David. God worked some things in his character over those many years that Saul was chasing him, and he was a shepherd and he was a worshiper. And now God's going to work some things in his gifting. He's going to work some things also in his character, but at deeper levels, at new places. And you've probably experienced this in your life. Have you ever kind of felt like you've gone around this mountain a few times in terms of learning life lessons? Right? That, gosh, am I ever going to get this straight? Like, how many times am I going to be in this kind of cyclical relationship? Or how many times am I going to make this financial mistake? Or how many times am I going to find myself sliding back into old habits, hurts, and hang-ups? Well, a couple of weeks ago, if you remember, one of my dear friends and mentors was here, Sakina. And something he was really speaking and teaching me has really stuck, and especially in launching this series. He said, Eric, part of your problem is you read so much of the Bible from a Western mindset. You're educated in Western schools. It's critical thinking. It's all about logic and math. And so for you, life is linear. For you, life goes A to B, B to C, C ultimately you get to your goal Z. Right? And we think life is so linear, but the Bible and many of the stories in the Bible aren't focused on these linear kind of things. Look at it this way. How many of you have heard this phrase that God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end? Okay? That fits in our Western mindset. The problem is those Hebrew words are saying God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. It is saying He has never had a beginning or never end. Like, we know that theologically, but because it goes through these lenses in our minds, we think, oh yeah, God is the beginning and He is the end. No, what the Hebrew word is trying to say is he is before the beginning and after the end. God has just always been. Does that make sense? And so even when we think about God and being present, he's just always been. He didn't have a starting line and a finish line. Okay? But we tend to think chronologically. We like things nice and ordered. And so we do this a lot when we read the Bible, and sometimes it's because the Bible was translated from Hebrew or Greek initially into English, and some words fall a little short. You could take like Psalm 23, for example, a really famous psalm, and it says, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me to local coffee shops where I get whatever. But there's this point in there where it says, he leads me on paths of righteousness. Now, how many of you have ever felt like you're moving along this path towards what God has for you, and your life is better described as 3 steps forward, 2 steps back? Right? Like, I can't believe I'm doing this again. Like, I know God's got me on this path, and I just feel like I'm getting to a certain point, and all of a sudden I'm all the way back here again. And I get so frustrated. And then the accuser comes into your head, and he's saying, yeah, you're never going to get it straight. You should just give up. You should quit. You're a loser. Everybody else is on this great path of righteousness, but you, oh, no. You don't have what it takes to make it all the way. Well, the problem is this, that word leads us on paths of righteousness. In Hebrew, it's better translated, better looked at. It's maybe the most simple form is a well-worn path, but it's your feet that have worn it out. It's better to actually say he leads us towards cycles of righteousness. That you and I do go around these things over and over again. That's why it kind of feels like the same thing, but it's different. Because what is happening in yours and my life is God's relentless commitment to help you become who He's created you to be. And you will go around things over and over again until they become so well formed in your character, you don't need to go around that mountain anymore. It is God never giving up on you and I. It is His presence at work in us deeper and further and leading us towards becoming ultimately like the righteousness of Christ. That's why in the kingdom of God, you don't fail tests. You cannot be a failure in the kingdom of God. Some of you need to hear this right now. You get to keep taking tests until you get it right. So it would behoove you to study if you don't like the test you keep taking. But still, God is not going to give up on you. So we find this with David, and he's gone from shepherd, and now he's just about to become king, but God is still going to work on him. He's still going to go around some circles that we've seen in the past, but they're going to be different because he's a different place and a different space in his life. So let me kind of set this stage, because today's a lot more introduction than it will be as we teach normally, a little more exegetically. But David gets to a point, if you remember the story, that Saul was the king, and Saul was super jealous of David. Was threatened by David, so spent a lot of time hunting David down, trying to kill him, so that David would not be able to take the throne. It was just a mad, toxic jealousy that infiltrated Saul's heart. So David, at the end of 1 Samuel, is living on this little border town called Ziklag. So he's right on the edge. It's kind of like if we chased you down to Tijuana, right? You can see the border, and there's not a wall there yet. Anyway, but you can see where your homeland is, but you really can't get there, right? And so David's been kind of hanging out there and hiding, and again, you can check that series. And we finished the story with the tragic death of King Saul and his 3 sons. It happened in a battle with Israel's enemy, the Philistines. There was this huge battle with just this multitude of arrows. I always kind of think of movies like Gladiator or whatever, 300, and all these arrows are flying through the sky. And that's kind of what happened. And all Saul and his 3 sons all died in this battle, which left Israel without a king. And so we kind of pick up the story of that. And when Saul dies, the nation of Israel, which consists of 12 tribes, you could think of 12 states if you like, a nation of 12 states. 12 tribes formed this nation, but not only did the nation was lying in ruin from being battered by the Philistines, but it lay in shattered pieces because of the divisions among the tribes themselves. And so we find this whole place in just disarray. And David hears about Saul's death and his best friend Jonathan, Saul's son's death. And he's trying to figure out what to do next because he has been called by the prophet of the nation to become the king. And so basically we're going to pick up the story where David's exile is over. But if Israel was to be forged into this mighty nation that God had called it to, it would take God's empowering presence to do it. And it would take some remarkable leadership to facilitate it. Because the nation immediately began to fight over who's next. 10 of the tribes were really siding with the former Saul and his one of the many sons in his lineage, and they were trying to keep this empire propped up. And then David was kind of with 2 other tribes. One of those was the strongest tribe of Judah. And so it was almost like not only did they have this common enemy of the Philistines attacking them, they had the enemy amongst themselves, this division and lack of cohesion. And David was going to step into this. Now, let me ask this question, or make this statement. I just know that there are many times in yours and my life that we start looking around our jobs, or we look around our families, we look around our friendships, and it's just shattered in pieces. And we start to ask questions like, can this ever get fixed? Is there any hope for reconciliation? Is there any hope that things can come together in my life again? Is there any chance that this ragamuffin, torn up group of people could ever amount to anything again, or has too much damage been done? Have you ever been there? This story is for you. And so we pick up the story of all these deep divisions, and somehow God was going to raise David up to be the type of leader that could create a cohesive family out of all these broken and unpromising pieces. I can't help but think there are times that Abba looks down at the sanctuary church and he goes, I'm doing it again. I am taking a bunch of broken lives and people's lives that have been shattered and are disarray, and I'm going to bring them together into a family. And they are going to conquer nations that they didn't think they even had a chance to overcome. They're going to take back territory that they thought was long ago stolen from the enemy. And we're going to watch a miracle of God's story over and over and over again. And so some of you know this, and you have this sense in your life that there's disarray around you, and you have a sense of calling. Like, I know I've got to stand up. I know that I've got to do something about this. I just don't know if I should. And this morning, may the Spirit of God so empower you to rise up and take your place in the disarray of whatever world you're living in, because He has something for you to do and to be. And that's what we begin to learn in this. So much of the book of Samuel happens a little bit differently. It's not all chronological A to B to C to D, because it wasn't written that way. It's kind of written with overlapping stories, because it's not the chronology that God wants to get a point to us. The point He wants to make to us is the power of the stories that come out of it. So we'll see a lot of this story, and then in the meantime, and then story, and over here, this was happening, right? So let me give you a quick example. 2 Kings 2. Somebody's gone, he ought to read the Bible at some point today. 2 Kings 2 says this: in the course of time, so Saul had died, he'd found out the news. David is grieved over Saul and his friend Jonathan. And then it says, in the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah? He's basically saying, okay, look, God, I'm down here in Tijuana. I want to get back home. I know that you've called me to lead in that nation, not this one. Is it time? So David asked, should I go up to one of the towns of Judah? The Lord said, go up. David asked, where shall I go? That's kind of like us saying, okay, God, I know you've called me back to the States. I know which state you want me to go to, but where in Colorado should I land? And so God says, to Hebron. Or in the really, really anointed versions, it says to Manitou Springs. Now listen, David had learned in his place of exile to not assume what God is doing, but to inquire. Hint, hint. All right, so verse 2, David went up there with 2 of his wives. David also took the men who were with him, each with his family. They settled in Hebron and its towns. Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the tribe of Judah. They didn't have an authority or a place to anoint him yet as king over Israel. So again, this is where this division has occurred. So his men come and the people gather and they say, David, we know you're called to be king. We've heard about the prophecies. We're at least going to anoint you over the king of this tribe, over this state. And so, in essence, you're governor now, right? But we recognize God's hand on your life. And so they anoint him as king over Judah. Now jump down a few verses. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, in verse 8, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, Asherai, and Jezreel, also over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. So Saul's commander was still trying to prop up this puppet nation, and he finds Saul's son who was disabled, and we're going to get into this story later. It's incredibly powerful. But his son was disabled and always been an outcast because of that. And Abner tries to this is all we got left of Saul's family. Let's grab Ishbosheth and we'll raise him up and we'll make him king. Really what Abner's trying to do is be the person in power and use him as a puppet. Okay? And so this is kind of what we see happening there. And so Ishbosheth was son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. The tribe of Judah, however, remained loyal to David. The length of time David was king in Hebron was over Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So we're kind of getting the big story here. Make sense? And so we have a puppet king. We have David being raised up, and David sees all the disarray. His heart is for God. His heart is for his nation. He, from the very beginning, has not usurped authority in order to gain a throne. He has learned to listen to God, to try to trust God. But I am telling you, he was afraid and he was broken, hearted over what was going on with the people, and he did not know what to do. Again, have you ever in your life stood over the broken pieces of something and felt utterly lost on what to do next? Then I want to give you today 14 verses that'll change your life. I am serious. As a matter of fact, you get a money-back guarantee today. If you don't think these 14 verses can help you persevere, rise up, and be empowered to bring pieces back together in your life, I'll give you your tithe back. Scott, he's on the board. Scott will give you your tithe back. All right. David, in the midst of these things happening, turned back to being the worshiper he was, the poet he was, the songwriter he was. He turned back and he wrote a psalm that we now brilliantly call Psalm 27, because nobody else could find a name for it. I want to finish with this psalm today. Put yourself in David's place. All the pressure he was about to encounter, all the brokenness of his heart over his people, all the desire he had to lead the way God wanted him to lead. Or put yourself in your place with a life in disarray and see if this works. He writes, he sings, he proses these words. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom am I going to be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to slander me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. The war break out against me, even then will I be confident. I mean, again, have you ever just felt in your life like it's a war zone around you? Like even when you're trying to do good, things are being slandered against you and made up about you, and Facebook posts say things that you never said, or you know what I'm saying? It just feels like your life just feels like it's so out of context. David knew what that was like, and he didn't even have Twitter back then. But you are not called to cower when your life is in disarray, but to lead and to influence and to worship. So David says this, one thing I ask from the Lord, this only thing do I seek. Out of all the stuff that happens in our lives, all the prayer lists that we give God, and especially when things aren't going well, if you're like me, you know, your prayer list gets longer when things aren't going well, right? And all that stuff's going on. David says, look, this is the one thing that I'm going to ask from you, Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. When it's all fallen apart, it's a good thing to know where your address is, where you reside in a place of shalom and peace and presence in your life. God, I want to be with you. Now, when he says the house of the Lord, he's not talking about this building. He is talking about in the house of God's presence. Where God's presence is, that's where he wants to be. Now, some people, this is a sanctuary for them, and this is where they connect with God and find God's presence here, because it's a safe place to do that. But he says this, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high on a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. And his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord, be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. I mean, I wish I could just unpack this psalm over and over, verse by verse. But you get the feeling of what David is doing in the midst of crisis in his life. He is saying, I have no other choice but to press into God and trust him, to go where God is. And the sacred tent is that idea of they had a tabernacle that moved when the people moved. It was God's place of dwelling. It was where his Shekinah glory dwelt. It was where his presence dwelt. You found peace and safety and provision and power and the things that you needed there. And David is looking around the nation. He's looking at this new level in his life, and he's saying, God, I can't do this if I am not dead center in your will, if I'm not dead center in your presence, if I'm not in the midst of you. I'm just going to seek you and your face and your answers and your wisdom and your peace over this situation, because I ain't got what it takes to fix this thing. Not a bad decision on his part. David was still a man after God's heart. He says in 9, do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior. David's honest. He's like, God, I know I've screwed up. I know I've made mistakes. I know that I've been a bonehead in different things, but don't turn your face from me. I need you now. Man, I'll tell you, God loves desperate people. He's not real keen to help self-sufficient people because he loves to be the hero. I'll let him be the savior. I'll let him be the hero. David says this, though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. You know what? That's a word for somebody here today. That's a word. I mean, I'm just going to stop right. We have this thing around here, like sometimes God will interrupt an entire service to speak to one person. Listen very closely to the promise of the scripture here for you in your life right now. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. He will receive you. I don't care what has been spoken over your life by your mom and dad. I don't care what sense of abuse or what type of rejection you've had. He will receive you. That is his promise. He loves you as you are and not as you should be, because none of us is as we should be. Just marinate in that for a second. God's got a word for somebody here today. And so David continues, teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Don't turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses to rise up against me and spout malicious accusations. I remain confident in this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart. Wait for the Lord. People, every crisis in your life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. When you enter into a crisis or you're in the middle of a crisis, if you will hang on to verse 13 and 14 with all of your might, you will find at the end of the crisis, somehow, some way, God's goodness. That is his promise over your life. That is why this is 14 verses, I think, that can change our lives. It sets us in the right direction. It sets us with the right heart. And it gives God permission to do miracles in our lives. I'm looking forward to this series. I hope you are too. Let's stand. God, I thank you for your word. And you know, right now, there may be a few of us in this room that you feel like your life's in disarray. Maybe this is a good opportunity to do Psalm 27 and turn to God. To let him receive you as you are. To let him empower you to find the way towards his goodness.
Thanks for tuning in to a message from the Sanctuary Church. For more information and media, go to our website at thesanctuarywestside.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube.